A world that never stops talking. How often do you stop to listen to yourself? Every day we are surrounded by noise, notifications, opinions, comparisons, expectations. And somewhere in that chaos, we lose the sound of our own soul. We chase success, love, and validation, yet forget the most important relationship of all, the one we have with ourselves. You see, before you can conquer the world, you must conquer your own mind. Before you can lead others, you must first lead yourself, and before you can find peace in people, you must learn to find peace in solitude. Solitude is not emptiness, it's empowerment. It's where strength is forged, visions are born, and clarity returns. So today, invite you, not just to listen, but to feel, because what I'm about to share isn't just about being alone. It's about awakening the power within you, the power that can only be unlocked when you master yourself first. Imagine this. You wake up every day surrounded by people, responsibilities, and noise. You're constantly reacting to messages, to opinions, to pressure. And somewhere along the line, you forget who's actually in control. You forget that the real battlefield isn't out there in the world, it's right here, inside your own mind. The foundation of mastery doesn't begin with controlling others or even circumstances. It begins when you make the decision to master yourself first. Most people live life in reaction. They respond to emotions they don't understand, habits they never question, and thoughts that aren't even theirs. They say, I can't help how I feel, or that's just the way I am. But that's not truth. That's conditioning. The truth is, you can train your mind the same way an athlete trains their body. You can condition focus, strength, and emotional stability. But it starts only when you stop running from yourself and turn inward. When you master yourself, you stop living like a passenger in your own life. You start driving. You stop waiting for motivation to appear and begin creating it. The difference between those who drift and those who rise isn't luck. It's self-command. It's the ability to say, no matter what happens around me, I control what happens within me. That's power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that governs your thoughts, your energy, your destiny. Think about it. Every great change, every breakthrough, every reinvention in history began with someone who took a step back from the noise and looked inward. They dared to face their doubts, their patterns, their pain. They realized that the external world is nothing more than a reflection of the internal one. You can't build strength on a weak foundation. You can't build peace in chaos. So the work, the real lasting transformation, begins in solitude when no one is watching. In those moments alone, you meet the real you, the one without masks, outperformance, without filters. It's uncomfortable at first. You begin to see the parts of yourself you've ignored, the insecurities, the fears, the unresolved stories that keep repeating. But that's exactly where your power hides, because you can't change what you refuse to face. The act of facing yourself honestly is the first step toward mastery. Self-mastery isn't about being perfect or emotionless. It's about awareness and choice. It's about catching that old pattern before it takes over. It's about saying, yes, I feel anger, but I won't let anger make my decisions. Yes, I feel fear, but I won't let fear control my actions. It's standing firm when life shakes you, knowing your center doesn't move. When you reach that level of command within yourself, the world stops controlling you. You start creating from a place of clarity, not confusion. The reason solitude is so powerful is because it strips away all illusions. When you're alone, there's nowhere to hide, and that's what makes it transformative. It's not about isolation. It's about calibration. It's where you realign with your truth. You remember what actually matters. You reconnect with the part of you that knows, not thinks, guesses, knows who you are and what you're capable of. That knowing doesn't come from noise. It comes from silence. Every day the world will test your mastery. Someone will criticize you, challenge you, or doubt you. You'll face uncertainty, even heartbreak. And in those moments, your emotions will want to take over. But if you've done the inner work, if you've built that foundation of self-awareness and discipline, you won't crumble. You'll breathe, center yourself, respond with intention. That's mastery in motion. It's not flashy. It's not loud. It's steady, powerful, and unshakable. See, when you master yourself, you stop fighting life. You start flowing with it. You don't waste energy trying to control everything. You simply control your response. That's freedom. The kind most people spend their entire lives searching for outside of themselves, never realizing it was within them all along. The beauty of it is this: once you start mastering your inner world, everything around you begins to shift. Relationships improve because you communicate with clarity instead of reaction. Opportunities open because your energy becomes magnetic. You attract peace because you carry peace. The world doesn't get easier. You just become stronger, wiser, calmer. The foundation of mastery lies within. It's built in quiet hours when no one applauds you, when no one notices. It's just you and your reflection asking, who am I becoming? That's where your power begins, in that private space where you decide every single day to rise above your excuses, your fears, and your past. So if you truly want to transform your life, stop looking out there for the answers. The answers are already inside you, waiting for you to slow down, listen, and remember who you are. Because when you master yourself first, everything else falls into place. Solitude, the very word, makes some people uncomfortable. For many, being alone feels like something's wrong, like silence means emptiness. But solitude isn't a punishment. It's preparation. It's the quiet space where your mind clears, your emotions reset, and your vision strengthens. It's not about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about stepping back long enough to understand how you want to show up in it. We live in a culture obsessed with connection. We're always online, always surrounded, always plugged in. And yet, so many people feel lost, disconnected, unsure of who they are. Why? Because when you're constantly tuned into everyone else's noise, you forget the sound of your own voice. You stop hearing your instincts. You stop trusting yourself. Solitude brings you back. It's not a retreat from life. It's a return to yourself. Think about it. The greatest breakthroughs in human history were born in solitude. The artist alone in their studio, the inventor in their workshop, the philosopher in quiet reflection. The moments of stillness are where ideas breathe. It's in those pauses that clarity happens, but we've become so afraid of stillness that we fill every silence with distraction. We check our phones, we scroll endlessly, we seek validation from others because we're afraid of what might surface in the quiet. Yet the quiet is exactly where the truth lies. Solitude isn't loneliness. Loneliness is emptiness you feel when you don't enjoy your own company. Solitude is fullness. It's peace that comes when you finally do. When you learn to be alone without feeling lonely, that's power. Because then no one can take your peace away. You're no longer dependent on people or circumstances to feel complete. You carry your wholeness with you wherever you go. You see, solitude doesn't separate you from life. It prepares you for it. When you take time alone, you begin to process the chaos. You start seeing patterns, how you react, what triggers you, drains you, what ignites you. You start realizing that most of your stress doesn't come from what's happening around you. It comes from the way you interpret it. Solitude gives you the space to change that interpretation, to rewrite your story with wisdom instead of emotion. And here's something powerful. When you sit in solitude long enough, you start to see what really matters. The world teaches us to chase more success, more followers, more noise. Solitude teaches you appreciation. You start noticing the small details, the calm of the morning, the rhythm of your breath, the simplicity of being alive. You remember that happiness isn't something to chase, it's something to notice. When you learn that lesson alone, no one can take it from you. Many people fear solitude because it forces them to confront themselves. When you're alone, the masks come off, the distractions disappear. You face the doubts you've been avoiding, the pain you've been numbing, the dreams you've been neglecting. It's raw, it's uncomfortable. But that's where transformation begins. You can't heal what you won't feel. You can't evolve if you're always escaping yourself. Solitude is where you sit with the discomfort long enough to understand it, and in understanding you grow. Every warrior has a moment before battle, that still moment when they prepare in silence, breathe deeply, and align their mind. That's what solitude is for you. It's not weakness, it's your training ground. It's where you sharpen your focus, reset your intentions, and reconnect with the fire inside. When you step out of that solitude, you carry a strength that feels unshakable because it wasn't built on noise, it was built on stillness. And here's the truth, people who fear solitude often fear their own power. Because in the quiet, there's no one else to blame. No excuses. Just you and your potential staring back at each other. That moment is sacred. That's where accountability is born. That's where you stop saying, I can't, and start saying, I will. Solitude gives you the courage to take ownership of your life. Once you learn to embrace solitude, your energy changes. You walk into a room differently. You no longer seek validation. You bring value. You no longer crave attention. You command presence because you've met yourself and you've made peace with who you are. That's rare. That's powerful. And the world can feel it. So the next time life feels loud, don't run from the silence. Step into it. Disconnect from the noise and reconnect to your purpose. Let solitude teach you what no crowd ever can. That strength isn't built by being surrounded. It's built by being still. That clarity doesn't come from talking, comes from listening, not to the world, but to the voice within. Because solitude isn't the absence of connection, it's the presence of self. And when you truly find yourself in that space, you realize you were never alone at all. Silence. The most powerful teachers you'll ever encounter, yet it's the one most people run from. We fill every empty moment with sound, music, conversations, notifications, because silence feels strange, even uncomfortable. Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. When you finally allow yourself to sit in that stillness, something extraordinary happens. Your awareness begins to sharpen. You start to hear the things you've been too busy to notice, not just around you, but within you. In silence, your mind stops competing for attention, the noise fades, and suddenly you can see what's really going on inside. You begin to recognize the patterns that run your life, the thoughts that repeat, the emotions that keep circling, the stories you keep telling yourself. Most people go through life unaware of these patterns because they never pause long enough to listen. The moment you do, awareness takes root, and awareness is the beginning of transformation. You can't change what you don't see. Have you ever noticed how loud your thoughts become when everything else goes quiet? It's like your mind rushes to fill the space and starts replaying moments, arguments, worries, and possibilities. And that's where the power lies. Because in that silence, you can finally watch your thoughts instead of being trapped inside them. You realize you're not your thoughts, you're the one observing them. That awareness gives you distance, and that distance gives you control. You stop reacting blindly and start responding consciously. The beauty of silence is that it brings you closer to truth, not the surface level truth that changes with emotions, but the deeper truth that never moves. It's in that quiet space that your intuition speaks. And it doesn't scream, it whispers. That's why so many people miss it. The world is shouting, go faster, do more, prove yourself. But your intuition simply says, wait, listen, you already know. When you create space for silence, you begin to hear that inner guidance clearly, and it will never lead you wrong. We've been conditioned to believe that action is everything, that if we're not moving, we're falling behind. But there's a kind of power that comes not from movement, from stillness. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. It means being fully present, completely aware of your surroundings, your emotions, your breath, your life. When you enter that state, you operate from clarity, not chaos. You stop being pulled by fear and start being led by vision. Silence is not about muting the world. It's about tuning into a higher frequency, the one inside you. When you practice it, your perception changes. You begin to notice details you missed before. The expressions on people's faces, the tone beneath their words, the energy behind their actions. You start seeing life with fresh eyes. The fog clears, and suddenly decisions become easier. Relationships become clearer, and your path begins to make sense. That's the gift of awareness. It simplifies what once felt complicated. And here's something powerful to remember. Silence doesn't just reveal the beauty. It also reveals the chaos. Exposes the pain you've buried, the beliefs that no longer serve you, the emotions you've ignored. That's not a sign of weakness. That's healing beginning. When awareness expands, wounds rise to the surface because they're ready to be released. And that's when real growth happens, when you face what's been hidden and allow it to transform into strength. Most people try to find peace by changing their environment. They switch jobs, cities, relationships, hoping the noise outside will quiet the noise inside. But peace doesn't come from rearranging the external world. It comes from mastering the internal one. Silence gives you that access. It teaches you to create peace from the inside out. So no matter what happens around you, your center stays unmoved. You start realizing that awareness is like a light. Wherever you shine it, confusion disappears. You stop stumbling in the dark because you finally see. You start catching your reactions before they explode into regret. You start noticing your emotions before they pull you under. You begin living with intention instead of impulse. That's what silence does. It trains your mind to observe before it acts, to breathe before it speaks, to think before it reacts. And the more time you spend in silence, the stronger your awareness becomes. It's like training a muscle. At first, it feels uncomfortable, even strange. But the more you practice, the more natural it feels. Soon, you won't crave noise to fill the space. You'll crave stillness to find your balance. You'll realize that silence isn't empty. It's where the answers you've been chasing have always been waiting. When you learn to be comfortable in silence, you gain something that can't be taken away: clarity. And clarity is power. It's the foundation of confidence, the root of wisdom, and the birthplace of peace. It's what separates people who react to life from those who shape it. So take time to be still. Listen deeply. Don't run from the silence. Run toward it. Because silence doesn't just quiet the world. It awakens the world within you. There comes a point in everyone's life when they realize the hardest person they'll ever have to face is the one in the mirror. You can fight circumstances, you can blame others, you can even run from your past, but sooner or later, life will corner you into a place where there's nowhere left to go, except inward. That's what solitude does. It strips away all the noise, all the distractions, forces you to meet yourself. And that, my friend, is the hardest and most important battle you'll ever fight. Most people spend their lives avoiding themselves. They stay busy, surround themselves with people, chase entertainment, drown in work, not because they're driven, but because they're scared to sit in silence and face the truth that maybe they're not living up to who they could be. Maybe they've settled. Maybe they've built a life that looks full but feels empty. It's easier to distract yourself than to confront that voice that whispers, this isn't who you're meant to be. But solitude, real, intentional solitude, removes your escape routes. It forces you to stop running. And when you stop, you begin to see the parts of yourself that you've been avoiding, the anger that never healed, the guilt that never faded, the fear that keeps showing up in different forms. Facing those emotions can feel like standing in front of a storm with no shelter. But here's the truth. Those storms aren't there to destroy you. They're there to cleanse you. You confront yourself. When you face those shadows head on, something powerful happens. You start understanding why you do what you do. You begin to see the patterns that have been running your life, how fear drives your decisions. Insecurity hides behind your confidence, how pain disguises itself as control. And once you see it clearly, you can finally change it. You can't fight what you won't acknowledge. You can't heal what you refuse to feel. This is the real work of self-mastery, not pretending to be strong, but being brave enough to look at your weaknesses without judgment. To say, yeah, this part of me needs work, and that's okay. Because strength isn't about never falling. It's about having the courage to face what made you stumble. It's about being honest, brutally honest with yourself about who you are and who you're becoming. We live in a world that teaches people to hide their flaws, to put on a mask and smile for the camera. But real growth doesn't happen in performance. It happens in raw honesty. When you're alone, there's no one to impress, no one to compare yourself to, no one to validate you. It's just you. That's when truth shows up. And that truth no matter how uncomfortable, is freedom. Because once you stop lying to yourself, nothing can control you anymore. Facing yourself isn't just about healing the pain. It's about reclaiming your power. Every piece of you that you deny, every insecurity, every regret, every unhealed wound holds energy. When you suppress it, you waste that energy. But when you confront it, when you bring it in the light, that same energy transforms into strength. The pain you once avoided becomes the power that propels you. The weakness you once hid becomes the wisdom you share. It's not easy. Growth never is. When you face yourself, you'll cry, you'll get angry, you'll feel lost. That's not failure, that's rebirth. Because the moment you stop hiding, you start healing. And healing is messy, but it's real. It's the process of tearing down the walls you built for protection and realizing they were actually keeping you trapped. In solitude, when you face yourself honestly, you learn compassion. You begin to forgive, not just others, but yourself. You realize that every mistake, every bad choice, every moment of pain was part of your evolution. You stop punishing yourself for the past and start using it as fuel for your future. That's when inner peace begins, not when life becomes perfect. When you stop fighting who you are. This kind of confrontation doesn't make you bitter, it makes you whole. It builds an inner strength that no one can take away. You stop depending on approval because you've already accepted yourself. You stop fearing loss because you've already met the part of you that can survive it. You stop running from your darkness because you've realized it's not the enemy, it's the teacher. And once you reach that point, that raw, filtered awareness, you become unshakable because the person who has faced their own soul can face anything. You can walk through chaos and remain calm. You can stand in uncertainty and still move forward with faith. You no longer need the world to be quiet for you to feel peace. You carry that peace within you. So yes, confronting yourself is the hardest battle you'll ever fight, but it's also the one that sets you free. Because when you finally stop running, you discover something you may have forgotten. You were never broken. You were just buried beneath everything you were afraid to face. And when you rise from that place, nothing and no one can stop you. Discipline. It's not a word people get excited about. It doesn't sound inspiring. It doesn't promise instant rewards. But it's the quiet, unseen force that separates those who wish from those who achieve. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you're meant to become. And solitude is where that bridge is built. Because when you're alone, there's no one to motivate you. No applause, no accountability but your own. That's where you find out who you really are when no one's watching. In solitude, the truth about your habits, your consistency, and your commitment is revealed. When the noise fades, excuses echo louder. You can't hide behind business or blame. You start seeing your patterns clearly. How often you quit when it gets uncomfortable, how easily you drift when distractions appear. And that realization is powerful because awareness is the first step toward mastery. You can't change what you can't see. People often wait for the perfect conditions to start, the right time, the right mood, the right motivation. But those things rarely come. Discipline doesn't rely on conditions. It's the ability to do what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. It's showing up when it's not convenient, staying focused when no one's clapping, staying committed when progress feels invisible. The champions in any field, in life, business, relationships, are not the ones who work only when it's exciting. They're the ones who do the work especially when it's not. Solitude teaches you that kind of consistency. When you spend time alone, you learn how to motivate yourself from within. You stop relying on external validation. You stop chasing inspiration. Instead, you create it. You learn to sit in the silence and say, I will keep going. I will keep improving. I will keep becoming. That's where real discipline is forged, not in moments of comfort, but in the quiet grind of solitude where your only competition is yesterday's version of you. It's in those silent hours that resilience is born. The world can't see you when no one's praising your effort, when your progress feels invisible. That's when character forms, because that's when you decide whether your commitment is conditional or unshakable. Anyone can stay motivated when life feels easy, but the person who can stay disciplined when life gets heavy, that's the one who wins. Discipline doesn't mean living like a machine. It's not about punishing yourself or chasing perfection. It's about alignment. It's about knowing what you truly value and making choices that honor it over and over again. It's about building habits that serve your higher self, not your momentary comfort. Because comfort is temporary, but growth lasts. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you're building a foundation that no storm can shake. In solitude, there are no shortcuts. You can't hide behind appearance or talk your way into progress. The work speaks for itself. You feel every weakness, every hesitation, every doubt, and that's exactly how you grow stronger, because discipline is a muscle. The more you train it, the more natural it becomes. At first, it feels like resistance. Over time, it becomes rhythm. You stop forcing yourself to act. It becomes who you are. And the beautiful thing is, once discipline becomes part of you, it touches every area of your life. You start showing up differently. You start keeping promises to yourself. You wake up earlier. You focus deeper. You handle challenges with clarity instead of chaos. You stop chasing balance and start creating it. The discipline you build in solitude becomes the confidence you carry in the world. Most people think discipline limits freedom. It's the opposite. Discipline creates freedom. When you're disciplined, you don't waste energy fighting procrastination or regret. You don't live react into life, you lead it. You know who you are, what you want, and what it takes to get there. That kind of control gives you peace. It gives you direction. It gives you power. Because once you master your habits stop mastering you. There will be days when you don't want to do the work. Days when your mind whispers, just skip it. That's the moment that defines you. Because each time you win that small battle, you strengthen your foundation. The world doesn't see those victories, but they add up. One disciplined choice at a time, you begin to reshape your identity. You stop identifying as someone who tries and start living as someone who does. That's how transformation happens. Quietly, consistently, day after day, when no one is watching. Solitude gives you space to build that kind of relationship with yourself, one based on trust. Because every time you keep your word to yourself, you build self-respect. And that's where confidence comes from. Not from praise, not from results, from the deep knowing that you can depend on yourself. When you reach that point, life stops feeling like a struggle. It starts feeling like purpose in motion. So when you think of discipline, don't see it as restriction. See it as freedom. See it as the act of loving your future self enough to do the work today. Because discipline and consistency aren't born in front of the crowd. They're born in the quiet, in solitude, where no one's watching and no one's applauding. When that discipline becomes who you are, the world will feel it, not because you said it, but because you've lived it. There's a shift that happens the moment you stop fighting yourself and start mastering yourself. When that happens, everything around you begins to change, not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you become stronger, calmer, more centered. You stop chasing control and instead you start radiating it. The chaos of life doesn't disappear. It no longer owns you. You begin to realize that the real victory was never about conquering the outside world. It was about conquering the one within. When you master yourself, the world doesn't have to change for you to feel peace. You stop depending on people, circumstances, or recognition to feel balanced. You understand that peace isn't something you find, it's something you create. And once you learn how to create it, no one can take it away from you. That's the power of inner mastery. It makes you untouchable, not because life stops testing you, but because your responses no longer come from fear, anger, or insecurity. They come from awareness, strength, and wisdom. Most people spend their lives trying to change the outer world to match their desires. They chase success hoping it will make them feel enough. They chase relationships hoping it will make them feel whole. They chase validation hoping it will silence their doubts. But all of that is backwards. The outer world doesn't create your inner state. Your inner state creates your outer world. The moment you align with that truth, everything begins to shift. Opportunities start appearing. The right people start showing up. It's not luck, it's energy. When your inner world is balanced, your outer world reflects it. It's like tuning an instrument. If it's out of tune, no matter how hard you play, the sound will always be off. But when you take time to tune it, carefully, patiently, intentionally, suddenly the same notes that once sounded chaotic now create harmony. That's what self-mastery does. It tunes your mind, your emotions, your energy. You start living from a state of alignment, not resistance. When you're aligned internally, you stop reacting to life and start responding to it. You stop letting emotions control your direction. You might still feel anger, fear, frustration. You're human, but you don't let those emotions steer your choices. You use them as signals, not shackles. That's what real freedom feels like, because mastery isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about guiding them. It's about turning your emotions into fuel for your purpose, not fire for your destruction. And something beautiful happens when you reach that place. You stop trying to prove yourself. You stop needing to be seen, understood, or validated. You move through life with quiet confidence because you know who you are. You don't need to compete with anyone because your race is with the person you were yesterday. You don't need to shout your worth because it's felt in your presence. World begins to respond to your energy differently because you're no longer grasping, you're grounded. When you master yourself, you also become more compassionate. You stop judging others so harshly because you understand how much effort it takes to face your own shadows. You stop reacting to negativity because you recognize it's just pain in disguise. You start seeing people not as threats, but as mirrors. Every encounter becomes a lesson. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to deepen your peace. You begin to lead not through control, but through example. Your calm becomes contagious. Your presence becomes power. The world will test you. It always does. You'll face setbacks, betrayals, uncertainty. But mastery isn't about avoiding storms. It's about learning to stand still in the middle of them. It's about walking through chaos without losing your center. Because when your foundation is built on awareness and self-control, nothing external can shake it. You realize that every challenge is simply another chance to demonstrate your mastery, another chance to respond from power instead of pain. The most extraordinary thing about mastering yourself is how it simplifies life. You stop chasing endless things because you start realizing you already have what matters. Peace, purpose, clarity. The noise of the world fades. You stop needing everything to go right because you trust yourself to handle whatever goes wrong. That trust changes everything. It makes you fearless. It makes you free. And that's the paradox of it all. The moment you stop trying to control the world is the moment you begin to influence it most powerfully, because people feel your energy. They feel your steadiness, your authenticity, your groundedness. You no longer have to force respect. It naturally follows. You no longer have to chase love. It flows toward you. You no longer have to demand success. You attract it. The outer world simply mirrors the inner one. So if you want the world to align, if you want your life to flow, your relationships to deepen, your vision to manifest, start with yourself, not with control, but with awareness, not with judgment, with compassion. Master your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, and the rest will follow. Because when you master yourself first, the world doesn't need to change. You do. And when you change, the world aligns.